Hi, and welcome to the Speaking Your Brand podcast. I'm your host, Carol Cox. Today, I have returning a very special guest, Tammy Lally. She is a TED speaker, but not just any TED speaker, the kind of speaker who has millions of views on her TED Talk. And there's a very good reason for that. And we're going to get into how exactly that happened. She's a published author and she's a certified money coach. She helps others master their finances by first conquering their emotions around money. And she brings decades of experience and, as she says, endless love to her process for money mastery. So, Tammy's also going to talk to us about the work that she does in her business and with her clients, as well as her talk on the TEDx Orlando stage that we work very closely on, the impact that doing that talk has had on her business, the speaking that she has been doing since then, the insights that she has for all of you around sharing personal stories and your message to a bigger audience. Tammy, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Can you believe it has been nearly 9 years? It was the summer of 2017 when you stood on that red dot on the TEDx Orlando stage and you delivered your talk, which was only 8 minutes. It was a relatively short TED talk, but it has had such a tremendous impact, not only on, I know, you and the work that you do, but on so many people around the world, the millions who have heard your talk and listened to it. So let's back up those 9 years to the spring of 2017. You had reached out to me because you decided to apply to speak at TEDx Orlando, and then you got selected, and then you decided that you wanted some coaching help to get it done. So what prompted you that you wanted to do a TEDx talk, and then what unfolded from there?
Yeah. So 10 years prior to that year, I had a traumatic family experience where I lost a brother. And that's the personal message in the talk. And when it happened, it really became clear to me that in time, I was going to be able to, through my own exploration around money and my own healing and my own understanding of my family and what happened with my brother, I knew there was a really powerful message that almost anybody could relate to. And it wasn't being talked about. But I needed the time. I really needed the time to heal. I needed the time to get through that experience, as well as embody my new mindset, my new behavior around money. And about 2 years prior to you and I meeting, I kept saying, I'm going to do a TED Talk. I'm going to do a TED Talk. I mean, I just knew that it was a very powerful idea worth spreading. And I knew that in my being, and I just got prepared. I guess I was just prepared for the moment, and you and I just bumped into each other a couple times, and then when I was ready, somebody mentioned your name again. And it was like, okay, there's my coach. So it just intuitively happened, but it was a very intentional desire.
And Tammy, I know how hard you worked on that talk. We did a number of sessions together. And at the time, you were obviously living here in Orlando, and where I live as well. That's why you were speaking at TEDx Orlando. So we would meet, I remember we would meet in person at your office, and I had my poster board with all the Post-it notes, and you would tell me all of these different ideas and things and stories. And I would, jot them down all over the Post-it notes. We just had stuff everywhere. And then, we kept narrowing it down. I was like, okay, we can't fit this in. That goes over here. Save it for your book, right? That was my thing. Like, we're not going to
that was your line,
right? Like, right. It's not wasted. It doesn't mean it's not good. It just can't fit into an 8-minute talk. We're just going to put in, which you eventually did write a book. So that didn't work out. And so we got it. We kept iterating it and refining it. And then I remember, you would practice it. And so when you actually got to that day on the stage, how are you feeling in that moment? And what were you hoping for?
Oh, the truth is, I thought up till that day, I was doing great, emotionally grounded. And then that morning, it was waterworks. I just started crying. Like it just started the very beginning of the morning. Oh my God. So um, the event started around noon. And I was like the fourth speaker. So I had a little bit of time to kind of grow into it. But I was extremely anxious. I was extremely anxious. I was more anxious than I imagined I would be. I really felt very prepared, but the emotion of the story and the potential impact was very, very big. It was really, really big. Um, but the intention on that day was to help one person out of help one person identify what they were feeling that they didn't have language for. That was the goal. And um and we accomplished that.
Well, you accomplished that for sure because
Yeah.
I was in the audience that day,
Mhm.
and when you were on the stage and you were starting to start your talk and get into the story, you could hear a pin drop in
Mhm.
that entire auditorium. People
Mhm.
were glued to listening to you, and they were there even though they weren't literally cheering you on. I think you probably felt that they were there to support you and to share this
Mm.
very important story and message, not only with the audience that was there, but knowing that it was going to be a video that would live on the internet as well.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. It was a very intimate theater. It helped that I had about 10 friends in the audience. and and it helped that you were there. And it really I zeroed in on one of my best friend that was in the front row. And I needed that. I needed that because it was so personal and it was so emotional. And it just it gave me the strength and helped me just keep going. It was, it really at that moment wasn't about me. It turned out to be about me after, and which I'll share. But um, the impact was really a big, which I didn't expect. Uh, but I certainly was very focused on the audience and being of service and helping.
One of the things that I talk with of our clients about when we work with them is that when they are sharing stories that are of a more personal nature, especially stories that they are not used to sharing publicly, whether it's in speaking engagements or podcast interviews, oftentimes, and I've had this experience myself, is what is called a vulnerability hangover. So
Mm.
you share the story, and then later that night or the next day, you're like, oh, why did I share that? It was too much. The audience isn't going to get it, or what are they going to think of me, or so, like all the the thoughts that run through our
Mhm.
mind. So, did you have any sense of that, or were you at that point feeling so convicted in what you wanted to share that you felt 100% confident that the decision you made was right?
I definitely felt the hangover. I mean, it's just real. I'm not gonna pretend like I didn't feel that because I did, and I felt it that night. I remember like going home and my dog was like, "Oh my god, I had a golden retriever and they're the best." And my body was like vibrating from that. And so I was I think I was a little bit more focused. My vulnerability was like, did I say everything? Did I land it? Did I come? It was, I think it's that normal part. Um, but the message I knew it resonated. I could feel it. I could feel the power of what the story, I could feel it when I was experiencing it. And in our work together in the preparation for it, I also put that book together during that time because it was also fresh. So there was so much of my self that was very clear that this was, uh, you know, on time for the moment. There was a lot of confidence and with the vulnerability.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that because I feel like it normalizes that we all have these feelings and these thoughts. And what I tell people is just like write a little post-it note, stick it next to your computer, your laptop, or your phone or your bedside. Like, it's normal to have a vulnerability hangover. It too shall pass.
That's right.
just, right? Just to remind us that
That's right. And do not watch the tape back.
no. Have you watched your video?
I have, but I didn't watch it back until quite some time. I think
I
when
understand. Yeah, I don't like to watch myself either. I will make myself do it, but I usually wait a little while too.
yeah, and I did, and then I will never do that again.
No?
I don't think so. It's not necessary. I know what I sound like and look like, and I'm like, I get too critical, you know?
Well, obviously it was amazing. 2 million plus people thought so as well.
Mm,
I think what
mm,
happened, Tammy, is that I think it was the following year, 2018, is the TEDx Orlando organizers submitted your talk to TED, the big parent organization, and it ended up as one of their top picks. So it got on the homepage of TED.com, which obviously is huge because so much traffic goes to that website. I
mhm,
think it was also in their email newsletter, so it went to their subscribers. And from what the research I had done around that time is only 50 talks per year ended
mm,
up in that realm. So on the
mm,
homepage and in the email newsletter. And that is, and I think this again around that time, 2018, 2019, that is out of 25,000 TEDx talks that happen in a
wow.
given year. I mean, I don't know what
Wow,
the
that's pretty
percentage is,
good.
but that's a
I didn't
point
know
like
that.
0.001%. So obviously that gave your talk so much visibility, but I also know that it wouldn't have gotten the traction that it did, even if it was on the homepage of TED.com, if people weren't feeling your message and
Yeah.
relating to what you said. And at the time, people were allowed to leave comments on the page, on the page
Mhm.
that the video was at. And since then, TED has taken the comments off. No surprise because people ruin
Haters.
yes, people ruin things and it's at what have you. But at the time, there were comments, and I remember people would leave comments, very sincere, heartfelt comments like, wow, this speaker, Tammy, said things that I could never verbalize. Like I didn't have the words for it, to your point that you said earlier. I didn't have the
Mhm,
words for it, but now I understand. Or wow, I cried listening to this talk, and now I know I need to go have a conversation with a loved one. So like you
mhm,
literally have transformed people's lives. And I know
mhm,
you've been contacted by people from all over the world because of this.
mhm.
So can you share a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. When I did the talk, I it was really like I've said, it was really about, maximum service, do for others. And what happened is that it really changed me and how I really owned, my own voice and stepped out of my own shadow. Um, and that level of vulnerability and honesty, which I was able to step into on the talk, it just had this enormous ripple effect, not only in my life, but so for the people that so what's happened is people have found that talk and they have been able to identify with something that has been happening in their family and within themselves, that they absolutely had no words for. The only words they had for it was something's wrong with me.
Mhm.
I'm a mess. I can't manage my money. I'm a screw up, embarrassment, shame, you know, the the message has rippled and resonated with every I have worked with people in probably 15 or so countries and a lot of people in the United States, but a lot of people in other countries. And everybody identifies with money shame. If you have money shame, you identify with it. I mean, it's you don't know if you don't have to have those words that it's money shame, but if you hear that story,
Mhm.
and you'll know immediately if it's running in the background. Um, so just the level the talk itself has had such an impact because people are actually looking for honesty. They're not really looking for me to impress them. People don't really want to be dazzled. They don't want another like, oh, a strategist, another tactic, another app. They want to get honest and they want help, right? And that's what the talk has done. It's like it gave them a place to go, oh my God, if that person can get up there and say what she just said and admit that, I can do it. I can talk to her. Right. And that's what's happened is people find me through the talk. They find me through the internet, the book, and they'll say, I'm calling you because I know you're not going to judge me because I heard your TED talk.
Yes, and
But
I think that is
yeah.
such an important point, Tammy, especially when it comes to money and finances, but it really can be any topic. And I hear this a
Mhm.
lot from people where they say, well, if I share a story that maybe where I failed in something related to the work that I do, or I tried something and it didn't work out, then my potential clients or the audience is going to think that I'm not cut out for it, that I'm not good at what I do. And I'm like, no, it's actually the opposite. Because if you are putting yourself up on a pedestal of perfection, not that the speaker is trying to do that, but that's what ends up happening, the
Mhm.
audience is going to say to themselves, well, that person can never understand how I'm feeling. So they're going to judge me. But to your point, when you see someone who has shared that, then you're like, oh, they get me and then they can help me. Because I have
Yeah.
shared on this podcast speaking engagements that I've had that I totally have bombed.
Yeah.
Now you may think, "Oh my god, why would I hire Carol as a speaking coach because she hasn't aced every single speaking engagement she's done?" Because I get it. Like I get
Yeah.
our nerves get the best of us. We get in our own heads, right? We think we have expectations of ourselves that we can't meet, and so I understand then when women come to me and we're like, and they have imposter syndrome and self doubt and all this. I'm like, yes, I've experienced that too, and then they know that I can relate to them. So just like you have done, Tammy.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a connection. We connect through honesty and humility. Like that's how we help. That's how we serve. That's how we connect. And do not, when we try to impress others, people feel it, smell it. They're not going to, they can't get what they need. And what they need is just really to feel your heart and to feel like you're genuinely there to help them. And that talk really showcased that light for someone to be in finance, someone like myself that's in finance, to be up there saying, I was the perpetrator of shame here. I was the enabler. I was not helpful. I had my own money stuff. Like that's really a big deal. And and that is why it has resonated. That's why it has reached millions, but it's also helped me work with thousands of people over those last 9 years. I mean, it's been extraordinary. Yeah.
And Tammy, you mentioned that the talk also transformed you, which you said was a little bit of a surprise and wasn't what you expected. And you said something that you you felt or you could now own your voice in a different way. How has that shown up for you in the 9 years since your talk?
Yeah. Prior to the talk, I skirted around my story. I skirted around my own shame. I had not only that experience with my brother, but in 2008, 2007, I owned a small mortgage brokerage company in Florida and I was faced with bankruptcy, right? During that housing crisis. I was in my 30s, I was overextended, bought too much investment properties, didn't know what I was doing, right? And I that was a lot to carry when you're in finance. A lot of financial people declare bankruptcy. It's actually a strategic plan, turns out. But I had a lot of shame about that. Um, and so when I got up on the stage, that was, like I said, 10 years after this event and after the event of the housing crisis. So I thought I had done a lot of work. I actually thought I had done a lot of work, individual work. I mean, I had done a lot of therapy, had done a lot of looking at myself. But what happened after was that when you speak that level of a truth, it has to transform you. It literally transformed the way that I saw myself in the world. I stepped out of the shadows. I was more honest, um, which I didn't even know was a possibility because I thought I was very honest, right? But it broke. Let me back up and say this. I have been a protector of my family. I have been a fixer in my family. I have wanted to protect others. And so getting up on that stage, my mother's still living. I knew it was going to be very uncomfortable for her. I don't know that she has actually fully listened to the talk to this day, but I do know that in our family that some of the secrets and so, it's about breaking free from shame. The talk is. Um, so it it allowed me to go deep. It just it allowed me to step out of my more and more of my own family system with shame and fixing others, and instead just holding space for people, um, being with people, empowering them, not trying to rescue, save, enable. It's one of those things where I have to practice what I preach. So for me to do that, it also reinforced, like, oh, wow, like you're out here really putting out your healing recovery journey, and you better keep living that healing recovery journey. Like there was something psychological that just propelled me into embodying that message in a full on way, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. Um, and it removed getting on the stage, broke down the shame that I still carried. I still
Mm.
had shame. I still had shame around money and some of the things that happened in my past, my part in my brother's story. And it helped me just more deeply own my voice, which removed that so I believe that shame, fear, and anger are our biggest barriers to wealth. That is my wholehearted belief. Okay. And in doing the talk for myself, it allowed me to really get out in front of those emotions. And it has allowed me to rebuild my wealth. And I am a individual, self-supporting person, no family inheritance, none of that kind of stuff. And it has allowed me to really step in with a level of integrity and strength around my finances that I didn't have before then. Right. So it's had an enormous impact on my financial well-being, my spiritual well-being, my emotional development, just my roundedness as a human being. I get it. I can by doing it, I can now be with people in their shame in a way that is so healing and uplifting versus, not like watching them go down the tube and not being able to help them. Right. It's like I know how to stand up in the midst of that. And it transforms our finances. People don't realize how the impact, the money impact is extraordinary, when you carry shame.
Well, Tammy, that's incredibly inspiring, and obviously for those of you listening, definitely check out Tammy's website. The link is in the show notes, and her TED Talk as well, so that you can hear that. And then, Tammy, what would you say to someone listening who has a personal story that has deeply shaped them, impacted them, and they know that there's a message around it, that they do have the pull to share it with a bigger audience, whether it's a TEDx talk or speaking or a podcast or something like that. But there's also that reluctance, all this, the voices in their head, or even voices from other well-meaning people around them who say, no, 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 like, you don't need to share that, you know, and so they're reluctant to do so. What would you share with them, or what would you have them think through as far
Mhm.
as whether or not it is something that they want to do?
Mhm. Such a great It's such a great question. I know there's so many people out there with stories, right, that they don't want to tell. So I would say a couple things. If one person is going to be helped, do it. That's your reason. If one person is going to be helped by your story, do it. Because I mean, ultimately, we're here to help. We're here to serve others, right? We're all here to serve others. So if the now the piece of advice that I would give is when you're bleeding, it might not be the time to get up on the stage. But if you give yourself time to go through the experience, the personal story experience, and you give yourself healing and you allow the story and the healing to actually, transform and do what it's going to do to your life, that's a really great time to share it.
Mm.
I think when you're bleeding, it's really hard. I mean, you're bleeding, it's like, right? So you have to give yourself some space. Like I shared already, it was 10 years after my brother's death that and it's his 19-year anniversary next week of when
Wow.
that happened. Right? So it's been 19 years since that happened. And it took me time. And I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the message from the mess yet. That's
Yes.
right.
Mhm.
It's like make your mess your message. I didn't have it yet. It wasn't there. So you have to trust yourself. You have to trust yourself. And if it's nagging and it won't stop and it's clear, then it's yours to do. Right? It's like I think it's intuitively very simple. If you listen to others, you will be distracted. You have to get quiet. You have to get real with yourself. You have to align with, what are you up to? How is this going to serve others? How is it going to serve you? Because it will serve you. It'll serve you in ways that you do not have the understanding of today, but be brave enough to do it anyway. We
Mm.
all need each other's stories. That's how we move on. That's how we grow as a society. We need them. We need them. And every time feels very urgent. Like every time in life, it always feels like I remember when I was going to do the talk and I thought, oh my God, I better do it before someone else does it and talks about money shame because I thought everybody was thinking about money shame. Like I thought it was real. Well, listen, 10 years later or 9 years later, people aren't really talking about money shame as much. There's dribs and drabs. Susie Orman's done a great job, and there's some other thought leaders in finance that are talking about a lot of emotions, and a lot of podcasts are talking about it now, which is awesome. And I feel like I did a part in that. I
Yes.
feel like I have a part in the financial messaging and the language that has changed around money and shame and emotions. I feel like I have played a part in that, and I'm still contributing to that. And that gives me enormous purpose, passion, fulfillment. So if you're sitting on a story, call Carol, get it out. You
Get it
don't
out.
need to
Yeah.
know how to do it. There's people out here that are going to help you bring it to the stage. So do it and don't look back. Just keep going forward.
Yes, and to your point, it transforms audiences, but it really does transform yourself, and I see that for so many of the women that we work with who are able to get to that deeper truth within them, and then build the emotional courage muscles to be able to share it with more and more people. Now, Tammy, I remember this was a couple years ago. You sent me a text message because you were invited to speak at a conference, and they asked you what your speaking fee was, and so you just like popped out a number, but it was a good number, a very, very
Yeah,
good number.
it was.
And you texted me and you're like, and they didn't even blink an eye. And I knew I could have quoted higher. And you said, tell your women that they deserve it to quote, like to set their speaker fees higher than probably that they think because they deserve it. So can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how your speaking has evolved over the past 9 years and how you understand kind of the speaking industry now that you didn't then?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Back then, like all the clients I meet along the way, I work with a lot of women that are entrepreneurs and got a brand out there. And what we do is we give it away for free. We just do when we start at the beginning. It's like, oh, or 2,500 or this, or 1,500, or we do these, right? And I did that too. So I would be invited locally in Orlando and, 2,500, 5,000 for a workshop for a day, which, that was fine. It was local. And then what happened was doing the work. So I work 100, almost 90% of my work is with individuals and couples within my coaching practice. And I know the impact I have. Like, I know the impact I have. I see the impact. And I also am very attuned to what's happening in finance. And I know that people are not sitting around being financial coaches because they are not trained in emotion. And there is a big loss. There's a big gap between the therapist and the financial advisor. And I'm right there in the middle. So I bridge the gap between those two places. I can hold the emotional space, but I'm also a practical financial person, financial planner by profession. And so I know how invaluable I am to the industry because people are burning through their money, right? People are burning through. So this particular engagement that you mentioned, and I'm gonna go back to it because I think it's really a good one, it was the finance industry. So it was a company that's very big in the financial industry and the financial app industry. And their CEO was very in line with emotions and money. Like he was very in alignment. And that was the theme of their conference. And so they found the organizers found me. And of course, they were like, "You're money shame. How are we not picking you? Like, what's your fee?" And it was across the country, high elevation. It was a lot for me to do it. I'd have to be gone 3 or 4 days out of my house, away from my clients. And I said, "Well, sure, I'll do it for this amount of money." And they came back once and said, "Well, would you?" I said, "No, this is the fee. This is the fee." And they said, "Okay." And I was like, "Oops." Okay. And that's when I reached out to you, right? So to answer your question, what's changed is that I know who I am and I know what I bring to the industry. And I am very clear on my messaging and my impact and how I can save people, and depending on who the audience is, I only speak at places where that I'm going to have an impact, right? Right? Which could be anywhere, um, I'm particularly drawn to the financial industry and the legal industry because those are two big industries that interlap, and there's a lot of money and earners and dysfunction there. So I think I answered your question, but
Yeah.
basically how it's evolved is my confidence has grown and I'm not going to not ask for what other people ask for all the time. And I mean by other, I mean other gender. Right? So
Yes.
men get it all the time. They get more. They get way more than what I asked for. I mean, and it's like, no way. No way. So I have to level up myself as a money coach, right? Preaching. So if I ask a client to level up, I have to level up. And that was me leveling up. And it was profound in terms of, if a conference if your topic matches the conference and you're the only expert really out there and you have a TED talk and a book, you're in. Like those are the credentials now. You need a TED talk. You need a TEDx talk. I mean, that's what everybody wants, right?
Yep.
So
Yes. Yeah. And also I think there's such a thing as perceived value, because if you had gone to them and said, "Oh, it's only going to be $5,000," their perceived value may be, okay, well, maybe she's not the speaker at the speaker level that we want for this event. I'm not saying that they would have necessarily thought that, but I think a lot of times we assume that everyone wants the lowest cost option, that that's what's going to look the best in the event organizer's mind, but that's not necessarily the case. It's usually not the case.
Yeah, I will add something that I found out that was really interesting. So when I get asked to do speaking or even like an online kind of a workshop, I get really friendly and comfortable and I ask a lot of questions. And I'll ask them, "What's your budget?
Mhm.
What are you paying?" Like I come right out and ask because, I'm not going to try to fit myself into something. But what I found out was that from one of the people, he was great. He was super honest. He said, "Listen, when you have a TED talk, you know, you're 35,000 to 55,000. We know that we have to pay you that much." Like that's what I was told.
That was dollars, everyone, by the way. That was what
Dollars.
Tammy just said, $35,000 to $55,000 for a speaking engagement. I know a lot of you listeners are like, "Oh my God, I can never quote that. I can never imagine getting paid that." Yeah, none of us could imagine that at some point, but it happens. And here's the thing. Companies and groups and conferences pay it. They're going to pay someone. They're going to pay some
Yeah.
speaker for it. It might as well be you at some point.
Yeah. And there's a couple things that they do. You want me to give you a couple more
Yes,
tips? What I
yes,
learned?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what I learned was when you're on the TED.com website, which is where I was, that what he told me, and this was the guy that was in the finance. I mean, he disclosed a lot. And he said, 35 to 55,000 is what we know we have to pay out. The only time we don't do that is if the speaker doesn't know their worth. Yep. Yep. And what they also do is they do this thing with the book. So I have a book, and part of what they do is they go for somebody that has a book, and then they'll say, "Well, we'll bring in 1,000 copies of your book and get." Well, that's no compensation. I mean, it's nice, but I'd rather drop ship them 1,000 and pay the price myself and then get my fee. Right. So that's the other trick that they do is they're like, "Well, we'll bring your book in and da, da, da." Listen, you don't get clients from books. Books don't pay the mortgage, right? Books do not. What pays pays the mortgage is the speaker fee. So do not take the book deal and think that's a win. It isn't. It's the way that they save money. Now, and that's what was disclosed to me as well, is that they were like, "Well," and I wouldn't do it. I said, "Nope, I'll drop ship it and I'll give it for free. You don't need to buy my book."
Right. Yeah. Just take because the dollar and profit that you make from a book sale is certainly
Is
not gonna
nothing.
amount to much, right?
It's nothing.
Yes.
$3, $5, right? It's
Yeah.
nothing. So I came around that and said, "No, I'll just drop ship and I'll give those for free," which I did. And you know, but the other part is that especially women, and I know you have a lot of women
Mhm.
listeners, right? We are nice. We are nice. We are nice. And I know you say this, I'm sure you say this all the time, but when it comes to money, stop being nice. Just ask what you're worth and don't apologize. Ask what you're worth. And if you leave your house and you're getting on a train, a plane, oh my God, and you're leaving your family, even if you're leaving your dog, and you're leaving the comfort of your bed, you better pay for that. You better charge for that. Like that is mental health. That is emotional well-being. Like there is a fee for that. And that's how I assess whether I go or not, is how much is this actually going to cost me? And sometimes I'm like, I need $100,000 to leave my house. Right?
Yeah,
Like
it's right.
it's
Sometimes depending on the season and what else you have going on, it could
Totally.
be. You know what's so funny, Tammy? I literally had this thought last night. So I is
Mm.
for listeners who are around our age, you may remember the supermodels from the late 1980s and early 1990s. And I would read all the fashion magazines at the time that would come out, as I was in high school and college. And there was a supermodel, Linda Evangelista. And I remember
Mm.
there was this quote, and she said something like, "Well, I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day for her modeling gigs." And at the time, of course, and I don't know what the inflation adjusted dollars would be now
Million
versus
today.
right, $10,000 in 1990. But I literally had that thought last night, and I'm like, that's right. Like, not that I'm saying we don't get out of bed for less than $10,000, but you should, to your point, Tammy, you should have in mind like what is reasonable compensation for what it is that you're doing, not only the time away and the travel and all that, but also because like Tammy, you have spent 25 years or I mean your entire career in different aspects of finance and the work that you do. You've put in all of these hours. You've been
Mhm.
amazing results from your clients. You know how to convey this message to an audience. That is worth a lot. And it's not the 1 hour that you're on the
Mhm.
stage, is everything that has come before, plus the unique elements you bring to it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I do this with a lot of my clients because, like I said, I have a lot of women I work with that are in consulting and out there working, getting hired by companies. And we go through the process of like, what's the time value here? Like your time is worth so much. And then on top of that, it's your expertise. Like if you've been in a career for 25 years, 30 years, you have invaluable knowledge. Like that knowledge has a price tag, and it's making those connections. It's like you've got to sit down and do the actual value, human life value. It's like one of the things we do in financial planning, right? How to determine life insurance. Well, what's the human life value, right? Well, your human life value for speaking is the same. You have to assess it in the same way. What's the cost to you to leave your house?
Yeah.
And when you land on that number, it'll change your life.
Yes, it
Yeah.
will. And that's one of the things that when we run our Thought Leader Academy and the women come through it is that we share the going rates for keynotes, for
Mhm.
workshops, etc., because we want them to know what our typical prices so that they have an idea of what to benchmark on. Because unfortunately, a lot of people don't have conversations. Well, just in general in society, we don't have conversations about money
Mhm.
and about what people get paid. But I like to make sure that people know what are the going rates and what's possible for them. Okay, so Tammy, speaking of money, I know that you have been kind of expanding on the work that you've been doing with
Mm.
individuals and couples and working with families, so parents and adult children, to think about what comes up, especially when parents are financially supporting their adult children. So, can you tell us where did this come from? Like, where were you seeing this, and what have you
Mhm.
been noticing?
Yeah, it is an extraordinary time in the world and with money. Everything things have really changed since COVID. They have
Mm,
really changed. That level of inflation that we experienced during COVID with housing, um, food, childcare, the big 3. Those are the big 3 for everybody. Housing, food, childcare. And if you don't have childcare, then it's health insurance, right? So it's just swap it out if you're not with kids. So what's happened is adult children in their late 20s, early 30s are relying on their parents, and their parents are either generate, most of them are millennials. I mean, boomers. Sorry. A lot of them are boomers, but a lot of them are X
mhm,
generation in their 50s,
ex
which is my
mhm,
generation, I guess is X, right?
yes.
So what's happening is my work has really evolved, not only with individuals and couples, but into families. So I'm now working in families with not only the husband and the wife, but the kids,
Mm,
right? The adult children. Parents are hiring me to work with their adult children because they are supporting them. They're subsidizing their housing. They're subsidizing their uh, childcare.
mm.
Like a lot of adult parents are paying for helping pay. But what's happening is people don't understand what's really going on internally, emotionally around this dynamic. So there's a lot of these words like entitlement. These kids are entitled. right? It's bullshit. They're not entitled. They are living in an extraordinary wealth gap that we do not have a plan for yet. We are in the middle of. So we are in the middle of this we're in the middle of it. And we need, we need all our smart people to come together and figure out all these housing and healthcare and childcare so that things can even itself out. But what's going on in the families is people are really carrying shame. The parents have a lot of shame because they feel like they're enabling and they didn't do it right with their kid. Like, why can't my 30-year-old be independent, right? And then the 30-year-old is feeling so much grief and shame that they can't self-support. But that's not really what's going on. What's going on is we're living in this massive wealth gap, and we need a bridge. We need some new pieces. We need solutions. We need real solutions in our society to solve this problem. But because we don't talk about money and feelings, the families are confused on how to navigate it. So the carried shame on both sides. There's also a lot of grief. Kids are experiencing grief because they did everything right. They went to college, they got the degree, they're trying to land a job, but they can't handle their rent. They can't buy a house. They can't get their they can't get their subscriptions under control. They're leaking money all over the place. And then the parents are furious, resentful. So my work is really helping them understand like what's really happening here, which there's a lot of emotional impact. So we're digging through the emotional part so that I can help both sides come up with a plan and a strategy with money that can be helpful, not harmful to the 30-year-old or the 40-year-old or the 50-year-old, because the 75 and 80-year-old parents are also supporting the 50-year-olds. So it's not just 30, it's 30, 40, 50, right? So it's a very interesting time, and it's such an important time to talk about what's really happening emotionally in the family systems where there is a lot of financial, which feels like financial enabling and financial entitlement. So that has become a very strong niche for me. Like over the last 6 years since COVID, that has really surfaced. We are also living in a huge time of wealth. Oh my God, the wealth. I mean, I've got 35-year-old kids that sell in companies for millions of dollars. But here's what's happening though. People do not recognize when they're in fear, shame, anger, and resentment. And when they're in those heavy emotions and they don't have a path through, they are numbing. They are chasing, they're shopping, they're gambling.
Oh my God, the gambling
The
is
gambling
out of control. Yes.
So the level of addiction that has arisen in the last 5 years is bigger than anything that I saw 10 years ago. So the kids, the younger people, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, I have clients in their 70s, the level of shopping, numbing, gambling, eating, just anything to take away the feelings, any way to numb the pain, because people don't know how to deal with their emotions. And you will stay broke, paycheck to paycheck living, if you do not know how to understand your fear, understand if shame is running in the background, and you're pissed off and angry about whoever, right? Even including, things you can't control like politics. But people sit in a lot of that fear and a lot of that anger, and it takes away from your wealth and your health and your ability to connect with others. And that's the systematic problem I'm seeing bigger and bigger and bigger in family systems. It's just, it's everywhere. So that my work hasn't shifted, it's deepened. It's gotten, since that talk, it is just laser focused on, how shame erodes wealth. It erodes your health, it erodes your wealth, and it will keep you lonely. It'll erode connection. So, I'm just seeing it really play out this is the one thing this is a gift from the talk. When I did that talk, the talk is about the impact it had on the whole family. It's all about shame and the family systems and how it erodes. I am living and sitting in that right now. Like, I'm actually a eyewitness in that arena with all of those families, and I can hold that and really be effective and help people. I couldn't do that 9 years ago before I did that TED talk. Couldn't do it. I wouldn't even know how to have done that. But that is a direct result of doing that talk. It has allowed me to be in that arena, be with those families, individuals, and really help them all connect, overcome these, hard, shameful life experiences. And people are thriving. Like, people are really thriving as a result of being able to come to a space to feel seen and all that.
Wow, Tammy. Well, you are an inspiration. Thank you for the work that you do. You are the messenger that your audiences are waiting for. And I am grateful to know you, to have had the opportunity to work with you. And I'm grateful for you to have come back on the podcast to share about this experience, to be able to look back over the past 9 years, but and to see how much you have grown into this role that you have now. And I have a feeling there's like another TED talk or a book in there somewhere, right? About this idea of like the family dynamics, which is, so you mentioned that you did that in your first talk, but what you just mentioned about the older parents helping their adult children and the wealth gap and the income inequality, I think that is something, like you said, is relatively newer, even
Yeah.
since 9 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really changing finance in general, because we're now, like, in finance, we're getting, there's these family boutique offices now, right? So there's families that have so much wealth. So there's now advisors that are going, working with the whole family, because, there's an enormous amount of wealth. There's an enormous amount of wealth. And there's going to continue to be more and more wealth than we've ever seen. I mean, it's extraordinary. So we have a lot to navigate, and we're just kind of in it. We're new and it's fresh. And, I'm here for the long term, as long as my brain keeps working and my heart's still pumping. I'll just keep being of service. I don't think I'm going to run out of any opportunity, because I
No.
think money and shame are here to stay, unfortunately, for a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for the work that you do. And thank you so much for sharing your insights with our listeners.
Mm.
And I appreciate you coming back on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor. True honor.
Until next time, thanks for listening.